The sun had long since set, leaving the world outside my truck a dark and foreboding place. The only thing keeping me company was the monotonous hum of my engine, and the occasional flicker of headlights from passing cars. I had been driving for hours, my eyes fixed on the endless road ahead, my mind wandering aimlessly. As I drove through the empty stretches of Texas, fatigue began to take its toll. My eyelids grew heavy, and my thoughts drifted further and further away from the task at hand. I knew I had to keep going, but my body was begging for rest. Just as I was about to give in to my weariness, I spotted a small parking lot next to a convenience store. It was a welcome sight. Offering the promise of a brief respite from the endless road, I pulled in and parked my truck, grateful for the chance to stretch my legs. The lot was empty except for a few parked cars, and the store itself was quiet and deserted. I stepped inside and grabbed a cup of coffee, hoping it would give me the energy boost I needed to continue my journey. As I made my way back to my truck, something caught my eye. There was a small spur in the door, as if someone had tried to break in. My heart started racing as I realized that someone had been trying to get into my truck. I always made sure to lock it, so this was unusual. I felt a sudden sense of unease wash over me. As I realized that I might not be alone in this empty parking lot, my eyes darted around nervously, searching for any signs of danger. Just as I was about to climb back into my truck, a chill ran down my spine. Something didn't feel right. I hesitated for a moment before slowly turning around. That's when I saw him, a shadowy figure lurking in the darkness. Watching me with cold, calculating eyes, I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized that I was in grave danger. Without thinking, I ran towards the store, hoping to escape from the stranger. I could hear his footsteps pounding on the pavement behind me. My lungs burned as I gasped for air, pushing myself harder and harder. I barely made it inside before he caught up to me. I quickly locked the door and called the police, my hands shaking with fear. The dispatcher on the other end of the line tried to keep me calm as I reported what had happened. The police arrived quickly, their sirens wailing in the night. They searched the area but found no trace of the man who had attacked me. I was shaken but relieved that I had managed to escape unharmed. After that night, I made sure to be more vigilant when stopping for rest breaks. I always checked my truck thoroughly before leaving it and made sure to lock it securely. The incident had left me feeling vulnerable and exposed, but it also reminded me of the importance of being aware of my surroundings and staying safe on the road. As I drove away from the convenience store, my eyes scanned the darkness outside, searching for any sign of danger. The night seemed darker and more ominous than ever before, but I knew that I couldn't let fear control me. I had a job to do, and I was determined to do it safely. The night was eerily quiet as I drove through the remote area. The only sound was the hum of my truck's engine and the occasional rustle of leaves as a breeze swept through the forest. The darkness was thick, and I could barely see beyond the reach of my headlights. It was the kind of night that made you feel like you were alone in the world, with nothing but your thoughts to keep you company. As I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The forest loomed on either side of the road, and I couldn't help but imagine all sorts of creatures lurking in the shadows. Every now and then, a branch would snap or a twig would crunch underfoot, and I would jump in my seat. I tried to distract myself by turning up the radio, but even that didn't help. The music seemed to fade into the background, drowned out by the sound of my own breathing. I was on edge, and I didn't know what. And then I saw him, a figure standing by the side of the road, barely visible in the darkness. My first instinct was to keep driving, but something about him made me stop. He looked lost and alone, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for him. I rolled down my window and asked if he needed help. At first, he seemed hesitant, but then he asked me for a ride. I hesitated for a moment, But then I saw the desperation in his eyes, and I knew I couldn't leave him stranded as he climbed into the cab of my truck. I noticed that his hands were shaking. He seemed nervous, and I couldn't help but wonder what he was hiding. We started talking, but no matter what I asked him, he always seemed to change the subject. It was as if he didn't want me to know anything about him. That's when I realized that something was wrong. I could feel my heart racing as I tried to think of a way out of this situation. And then it happened. He pulled out a knife and demanded that I give him all my money and belongings. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what to do next. And then I remembered the electric shock device that I kept in my glove compartment. It was a last resort, but I knew it might be my only chance. I threw my phone at his face, hoping to distract him for a moment. And then I quickly grabbed the electric shock device and stunned him with it. He fell to the ground, unconscious. I didn't waste any time. I immediately drove to the nearest police station and reported what had happened. The police arrested the man, and I later found out that he had been wanted for several robberies in the area. I was lucky to have escaped unharmed, but the incident left me shaken. From that day on, I made sure to be more careful when picking up hitchhikers or stopping for rest breaks. I always kept my guard up and made sure to stay safe on the road. Being a trucker can be a lonely and dangerous job, but I knew that I had to keep going, and even though I had faced a terrifying situation, I was determined to keep driving and delivering my cargo safely. As I drove away from the police station, I couldn't help but think about how lucky I was to have survived. The darkness of the night seemed even more ominous now, and I couldn't wait to get back home to my family. But even as I drove, I knew that I would never forget that night. It had changed me in ways that I couldn't even begin to understand, and yet, somehow, it had also made me stronger. I had been driving for hours, my eyes heavy with exhaustion. The sun had long since set, and the darkness had settled in around me like a thick blanket. My truck rumbled along the deserted road, the only sound breaking the eerie silence, as I rubbed my eyes. Trying to shake off the drowsiness that had settled over me, I realized that something was wrong. My truck was stopped in the middle of the road, with no other vehicles in sight. It was as if time had frozen, and I was the only one left in the world. A sense of unease settled over me as I looked around. Trying to get my bearings, the darkness seemed to press in on me from all sides, and every shadow seemed to hold a threat. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Suddenly, I saw a glint of light on the dashboard. As I leaned forward to investigate, my heart racing with fear, I saw a note lying there, as if it had been placed there by some unseen hand. It was a warning, telling me to stay out of things that didn't concern me. It was signed with a symbol that I didn't recognize, but it sent shivers down my spine. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that had settled over me and started the truck. But as I drove down the deserted road, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow seemed sinister. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I saw a car appear in my rearview mirror. Its headlights blazing, it was tailing me, following me with a relentless determination. I tried to speed up, but the car stayed right behind me. Its headlights blinding me, my heart pounding with fear. I desperately searched for a way out. Finally, I saw a sign for a town up ahead and made a desperate dash for it. The car followed me all the way to the town. But as soon as I pulled into the police station parking lot, it peeled away, disappearing into the night. Shaken and terrified, I stumbled into the police station and told them everything that had happened. They took me seriously and launched an investigation into the criminal organization that had been following me. As the days passed, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every sound seemed ominous. I quit my job as a trucker and moved to a new city, hoping to start a new life. But even now, years later, I can't forget that night. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that danger could lurk around any corner. And every time I see a symbol that I don't recognize, my heart races with fear. I knew I had to be careful, to always be on the lookout for any signs of danger. I took self-defense classes and made sure to always carry pepper spray with me. But no matter how prepared I was, I couldn't shake off the feeling of paranoia that had settled over me. One day, while browsing through a thrift store, I saw a symbol that sent shivers down my spine. It was the same one that had been on the note in my truck all those years ago, my heart racing. I quickly left the store and drove home, locking all my doors and windows. That night, I couldn't sleep, every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside made me jump. I knew I had to do something, to confront my fears head-on. The next day, I went to the police station and told them about the symbol I had seen. They launched an investigation and discovered that the criminal organization that had been following me all those years ago was still active. With the help of the police, I was able to track down the leader of the organization and bring him to justice. It was a long and difficult process, but finally, I felt like I could breathe again. Years have passed since that night on the deserted road, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. It was a reminder that danger can come from unexpected places, but it also taught me to be strong and to never give up in the face of adversity. Now, whenever I see a symbol that I don't recognize, I no longer feel fear. Instead, I feel a sense of determination and strength, knowing that I have overcome my fears and emerged stronger on the other side.